Welcome back to the Panic Room, everyone, for another book review. So deep breath. Today we are tackling The Children God Forgot. And boy, does he need to start remembering. This book was bonkers. Bonkers. If you watched my epically long movie length review, you know that I read this over the course of kind of being a little sick. And yeah, this book combats like drowsy cold medicine to keep your ass reading. Like, that's how crazy it is. You have ghosts, you have detectives, you have monster babies, all kinds of things happening in this book. Literally. It's all in like the span of 420 some pages. And it's bonkers. You know, it almost kind of reminded me of the rhythm of Red Hands, if you watched that review. There was just something happening every single time you turned the page, is what it felt like. But in the best possible way. Like, you just kept reading like, holy mother of God, what could possibly happen next? And then more batshit insanity ensues. Like, it's wonderful. It's great. If you like action-packed books, you're gonna love it. So, of course, I'm gonna warn you guys for any kind of spoilers, but I also need to preface this by saying that we're gonna talk about some somewhat triggering things. Number one, we're going to talk about assault. Now, I know what you're saying, Pax, monsters, ghosts, what could possibly be happening? Yes, there are some assault scenes in here. Granted, they are very strange and very weird, but they are also very descriptive. And I myself, thankfully, do not have this trauma, but I know there are people that do. And I feel like if you have that trauma, you would want to know about it. So, yes, there are going to be some talk about assaults. And there is some mentioning of abortion as well. So if that is something that is sensitive for you, something else to keep in mind. But let's dive in, shall we? Boy, is there a lot here. And I know this is probably going to sound like that I'm just rambling at points, because that's the way the book was. It was like, this happened, and holy God, this happened again. And yeah, that is just how it was. And it's kind of like, buckle your seatbelts. You're in for it, you know? So yeah, let's do this. So we open with a couple of different timelines. You know, you have a woman who has been in a car wreck. You know, she's having some abdominal discomfort. You have another woman who's kind of just chilling in her apartment. You have this whole thing with some doctors at a birthing center. And then you have this whole thing with some detectives. And if you don't like stories with different timelines, no worries, because it converges very, very quickly. You start to see from like, I don't know, page 15, about how all of these stories are connected. It's a very clear line that all of this stuff is going to be coming together real quick, and it does. Everything happens quick in this book. So our main focus seems to be on this phenomenon that's happening in the city of London, which is where our story takes place, about how all of these women seem to keep turning up pregnant, and none of them know why or how. And they're all functioning adults that understand the cycle of life, and they still can't tell you how, okay? Then we also kind of start to hone in on our main two characters, which are these two detectives, Jerry and Jamila. And they are very different, and I get the sense that they must be reoccurring characters for Graham Masterson, the author of our book, because there is a little bit of a reference back to them being partnered up previously, but it doesn't really play into this book. So if you don't want to read any of the previous stuff, I don't feel like you have to. So you couldn't have two different characters. It's very much a like Law and Order SVU kind of deal. That was the only Law and Order I ever watched. So you have Jerry, the I've been a cop longer than you've been alive. I've seen it all twice, and have the t-shirt, like I said in the log. And then you have Jamila, who is this very intelligent Pakistani woman. She comes off as very eloquent, but also a little bit of a know-it-all. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I could see her getting annoying real quick, you know? But they both have their downfalls. Like, Jerry's kind of ignorant, and this is a very multicultural book in a lot of ways. Like, they mention Pakistani culture and Indian culture, and Jerry just is not the sensitive individual that you would hope that he is to certain cultures. Let me just leave it at that. And then you have Jamila, who is a little bit of a know-it-all. Not much. I liked her overall. But she does kind of come off as a little snooty sometimes. So I can kind of see where that would be a little bit of a turnoff if you met up with her. So these are our two main characters, and they kind of get tasked with this job of figuring out what the hell is going on, because you have all of these odd happenings in London, but everything kind of gets kicked off with one of my personal favorite characters, Gemma. She is a flusher. Now, if you're like me and didn't know what the hell that meant, allow me to elaborate. Yeah, if you don't like potty talk, like poop, turn off now, because there's a shitload of it in this book, no pun intended. So Gemma is a flusher. She's a type of engineer, and her job is to keep the massive sewer system under the city of London clear. Now, if you're like me, I never thought about this. This is one of those things, like, I knew on a certain level that it had to happen. It just was not something that I actively thought about having to occur. And then you start to think, like, well, London's been around a very, very long time. These sewers must not be up to date, right? Because they were built way back when. Exactly. So you have to have these people here to constantly update and widen and keep them clean, because the sewers aren't meant to hold some of the shit that we flush down the drain now. And PSA, don't flush weird shit down the drain, because, oh my gosh, the descriptions in this book of the stuff that she sees. Okay, so part of our action is centered around her and her team finding this thing in the sewer that they call a fatberg. Yeah, like iceberg, except made out of fat. Yeah, like hardened fat that people have dumped down the drain after cooking. Yeah, so she's talking about, and it's very descriptive. This whole book is very, very descriptive. Smells and sights, the whole shebang. And it's talking about how, like, she's walking through with her team. The one thing that sticks out to me is she's talking about how, like, because obviously the fat clogs it like an artery, you know, and it catches stuff, right? Except she's talking about how, like, there's toilet paper hanging down, like stalactites, and how, you know, like, it'll be together, like, almost like a book, except she calls it, like, toilet paper phyllo dough. Way to ruin baklava for all of us. I mean, come on. Jesus, people. So, yeah, if you are not into that, if you do not like poop talk, there's a ton of it. There's so much of it. But it's necessary, because our main people, we're starting to get into spoilers, by the way. Our main people, our kids, the children that God desperately needs to remember, live down here. They live in the sewer. And so Gemma starts to see what she thinks are visions, right, with her team, and all kinds of spooky paranormal shit starts happening. It is awesome. So then, let me tell you about this spooky stuff. Every time that these kids or this entity, like this caregiver of them, so to speak, manifests, you start to get the smell of lemons, and you're like, why? Well, you find out later. But you also get the eerie green light, like sickly green light. I was like, oh shit, it's got Pax Panic lights. Anyway, that was just me. I know nobody else will think that. But yeah, the way she describes the green, it's like that green that I love so much that is all over my channel. So all of these things manifest every time that the kids or this entity start to kind of come around. Mainly the entity. It's kind of like she triggers it. So of course they're like, what the hell's going on? So then the detectives get brought into this. Meanwhile, you get all these little, like, side stories of these women that find themselves pregnant. And this one in particular, the lady who was in the car wreck, you follow her to the hospital, they do the cesarean section, take out her baby, and it is legit a squid baby. It is an octopus baby. The way they describe it is beautiful. Talking about, like, little finger nubs hanging off a tentacle. Oh, it's awesome. And the best part is how they talk about its face. They say it's really angelic looking, but it has these big, like, bluish eyes that just stare at you like they're staring through your soul. And it's got lungs on the back of the head that go, like, in and out. Oh my gosh. Tell me that doesn't sound horrifying. So the thing escapes. Of course it does. And I was like, it's looking for a new host. I've seen enough movies. This thing's looking for a new host. And obviously, it occurred to me exactly what it wanted in its host. It wants a new womb. Okay, for all of you that aren't following my facial expressions, it wants a new pregnant lady, okay? So it gets out of the hospital and shows up in this poor, unassuming woman's apartment and eats her cat. Legit, eats her freaking cat. Not, well, kind of eats it, kind of just destroys it. You know, she's flipping out, calls her boyfriend. Her boyfriend doesn't believe her. He's like, oh, it's a spider. Like, okay, all right, okay. I don't like spiders either, but I think I can tell the difference between a spider and a freaking octopus baby, okay? So I was like, what the crap? You know, like I was getting a little teed at the boyfriend. So then, boyfriend comes home, sees the cat, thinks she did it. Like, thinks that she might be going crazy. I'm like, okay, I'm done with this boyfriend. Thank God he's just an auxiliary character. So they go to sleep, and she has this dream of like something wet feeling down there and like starting to get kind of painful. Wakes up, trigger warning, this is where we're talking about assault. The strangest damn assault you've ever heard, but assault nonetheless. Wakes up to this thing trying to get inside of her. I'll give you a minute. I needed one. I needed a minute. I needed a lot of minutes after that because it is incredibly graphic. The boyfriend actually gets it out of her in a spectacularly bloody scene. It's fantastically written. I loved it, but it was very like, oh God. Like, you thought it, you knew that that's what this thing was going for. But to see it played out in words, like to visually have it drawn for you, was something else. It was something else. That scene will stick with me, and we've got some crazy ass scenes coming up, and that one was still one of the worst to me. So, she goes to the hospital, obviously creature thing gets away, and if you didn't watch the vlog, the whole time they're like, how is this thing moving? I'm like, it's an octopus. We already know shit's in the sewer. What makes you not think that it's crawling out of the toilet? I mean, the detectives know that something's going on in the sewer at this point. These people are like, how's it getting into our house? It's the toilet. Everybody has a toilet, and it's connected to the sewer. It's not rocket science, people. I was just like, my God. And you know, they never did make the connection. Never once did somebody think like, oh, it's crawling through people's sewer lines. Nope, never did. But anyway, I digress. So we also get another story of a young Muslim girl who winds up in the same predicament, and she actually tries to cut the fetus out of her. And thankfully she lives, but it was a very gory scene. And this one they described looking like kind of like a squirrel. It was very strange. So, of course, all of these fetisi, are at this birthing center, right? And you have these doctor characters that kind of come in and out. And, you know, they're baffled because they have no idea what the hell's going on. And then, out of the wild blue yonder, we get the paranormal section of this book, where we have this, like, smoky ghost figure with a hood and shit showing up, calling these little monster kids her nestlings. And she smells like lemons, and you're like, why the hell does she smell like lemons? Why do they keep telling us that? And so, yeah, these detectives are kind of just running all over London like, okay, we've got a witch lady. Oh, and did I mention that the witch lady has a tendency to, like, dismember people? Yeah, cut off a dude's legs, ripped off another, like, poor little doctor's intern's arms from the elbow up, both of them. Yeah, you get a lot of that. So if you really like body horror, it's wonderful. Wonderful part of that book. So, of course, me being me, I'm like, I want to know more about this entity. Okay? And you do... I have to say, I thought the book was a little bit lazy in how it gave us our story about the entity, the smoke. Oh, and also, did I mention that she can't speak? She speaks through other people. Only women. Only women, right? She only talks through women. At one point, she even talks through the Detective Jerry, his 9-year-old daughter. He got pissed. I would have been too. It's like, you know, leave the kid alone, man. But you know, what's funny is the whole time, here she is chopping people's, like, legs and arms off and shit, but she keeps talking about how she thinks life is sacred. Life is sacred. Life is sacred. You know, and how, you know, her nestlings were these kids that nobody wanted, and even God turned them out of heaven, but she took them. And then they get this little clue. While they're down in the sewers investigating, they get all these keys thrown at them. Really awesome sounding keys, okay? Like little signals and stuff on them. So Jamila, the Pakistani woman detective, she gets the idea to call a locksmith, who specializes in old antique locks, which is smart, I thought. So you find out that these locks were actually almost like talismans, and they would put them around these powerful people's coffin and they would put the key in and leave it there, because that way, if you unlocked it, this entity would be called. And so I think there were 72. So there was 72 different demons you would have to fight to get whoever out of the coffin. It was very almost like Brendan Fraser's Mummy. We don't want your ass to rise, so we're going to do whatever we can to keep you in this box, that kind of deal. And so I thought the book handled the whole backstory with this entity a little bit lazy, because you pretty much just get these detectives showing up at the police station, and this guy is like, yeah, I found this stuff in a book about how there used to be a witch, and, she was doing all this stuff with, women who didn't want their babies, and then she got caught by this dude, and I thought that was a little lazy. I really did. I really feel like maybe we could have reined in a little bit more of, the poop talk, and, I don't know, fetuses committing assault, and maybe went a little bit more down the path of let's give a decent backstory to this entity. Well, come to find out, that's where the keys came from. She was hurling the keys at them. The smell of lemon is because they would heap lemons on the coffins of the witches because they thought that it was purifying. Yeah. So you get I don't know, 4 pages of backstory, and that's it. So now these two detectives are like, okay, we have to save the kids. And to a point, I'm like, you know what? I commend them. I commend them because, they keep seeing all these kids around town and in the sewers and stuff, and they want to save them. And they are all very, very, very deformed in various ways. But I don't know. Every time that they would bring up the idea of saving the kids, I was like, that's just a road that's not going to come out well. I really think that maybe we should be focusing more on the entity here and trying to deal with her. Maybe get her out of the picture and then go after the kids. But I digress. They went after the kids. They put them in this hospital, hospital ward. They call it the peaceful ward. I was like, and of course that lasts all of 12 seconds before they start going insane. Here comes the entity showing up. I mean, what did they expect? And they didn't do anything. They just pretty much put these kids in here and were like, hey, take care of them. We'll be right back. We're going to go deal with this ghost thing. Not thinking that the thing was going to come for them. I mean, come on. Anyone would have known. Based on what this entity was doing with these kids and how protective she was throughout the entirety of the book, of course she's going to come for them. And sure enough, she does. And just sets them on fire. Yeah, just sets them on fire. They're dead. They're gone. And it's like, well, that was a futile attempt, why did you even bother going down in the sewer, This is what I'm saying. Should have went after the entity first. Then the kids would have been safe. So you find out that the backstory of this entity is that she was a witch. She was Satan's mistress, as a matter of fact. And yeah, apparently she was known for thinking that life was sacred, but all of these women would go to her with unwanted pregnancies. So she would essentially give them what they wanted, but then keep the fetus and reanimate it, especially if it was a fetus due to abnormalities or something like that. So that's kind of commendable, but at the same time, she's killing people all over London. There was one scene when they go down to try to look for more stuff in the sewer, which I kept thinking, I was like, I know you got to go down there. I know you do. But you legit, at this point, they had no idea what they were dealing with. This entity gets so mad. You have to remember, this is in the middle of London. She gets so mad that she causes literally a shit-splosion happening in the middle of the city of London, just sewage flying everywhere. You get all of these descriptions about how turds and body parts are raining down over everybody's head. It's insane. Absolutely insane. So, I wish I could tell you that it kind of all gets taken care of at the end, but not really. So they kind of go the route of, old movie monster where they well, we have to find her lair, and put all these locks back and put the keys in the locks, and they end up getting an exorcist, and he was like, well, I've never exorcised someone who's already been exorcised. You know, so, and they kind of have this like end boss battle thing, but it's not the greatest ending. I have to say, it really, I don't know if it was the fact that all of the book was just balls to the wall insane, so the ending didn't seem that great, or if the ending just wasn't that great. I honestly don't know. I'll leave that up to you if you read it. You know, it was a great book. It really was. Read it just for the journey, if nothing else. You know, screw the end. Just read it for the journey, because you're like, whoa, this is crazy. Absolutely crazy. Really good, and I'll reiterate what I said in my vlog. Really good if you're just looking to get into body horror, because there's not like tons and tons of in-your-face, you know, gore in this. But there's plenty of like severed body parts and weird mutant things happening and a lot of poop. So yeah, if you're looking to get into body horror, maybe, you know, you've read some books in the past and you're like, this one might not actually be that bad for you. And it's got, Lord, it's got everything. You got ghosts, mutants, I mean, you name it, practically, it's in this book. So guys, I'm sorry if this seemed like kind of an out there review, but this was a really out there book. It was a really out there book. It had a lot in it. So maybe pick it up, give it a whirl. I mean, I know I've given you a lot about it, you know, some things that could be spoilers, but really read it and you'll see what I'm talking about how it's just like you're left like, what in the world could happen next, you know? And it's like it just keeps happening to you as you read it. It's just something else happens, and you're starting to feel kind of like the detectives and like, what else could there possibly be? So guys, that's it. Thank you for hanging out for another review in the Panic Room. Please like and subscribe, it would really help me out. And until next time, bye for now.